Hello and welcome back to another video course from devtechie.com, and in this video course we are going to be creating this Hacker News client app in SwiftUI. So what we're going to be doing is basically we're going to be fetching the Hacker News articles from the internet using an API endpoint and then rendering them into this app that we are going to write in this video tutorial. Okay, so what we're gonna be basically listing out is all the latest articles that are on the front page, and from here user can basically navigate into the article to read a little bit more about that article. Okay, so basically they can use this Hacker News client as a client which they can actually read news on. Okay, so the API endpoint that we're going to be using is hackernews.algolia.com. so hn.algolia.com/API v1 search, and we're going to be using the tag front page. Now this API is very rich in nature and it provides a lot of attributes as a response. So it has information about the author, the title, URLs, different tags, and other associated stories that are part of this story as children. So all the associated stories with their story ID or object ID. So this API is very rich, and you can actually build out a really feature-filled API client out of this. But in order to show you how SwiftUI and the whole networking aspect works, we are going to be focusing on just the first level of response. So we're going to be creating a limited set where we're going to be rendering the title, the URL, and the object ID for this particular response. So basically we're going to be just using some of the API responses from this exhaustive API. Okay, once again we're going to be using everything Swift UI and everything iOS, so you don't have to worry about building in or bringing in any new libraries per se for this case. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna get this aside, and let's go ahead and basically create a new project. So what I've done is I've created a brand new SwiftUI project. Now this project itself does not have anything. It's what you build out. Basically you get when Xcode builds out a project out of the box, using a template. So let me show you how you can actually create one. So you just go for Xcode, file, new project, and when you get the screen, just select app and click next, name your project, select your team, provide your organization identifier, which is gonna basically create your bundle identifier. Make sure the interface is SwiftUI, the language is Swift, and then leave everything as default. So testing system none, storage none. Okay, now after you've filled out all the information, click next. It'll ask you to save this project at certain location. Go ahead and save the project at that location, and then your project is created. So once you've followed all those steps, you can basically land right here where we are on this page. Okay, now what we're going to do is we are going to get started by creating a new model file. So model is going to help us parse all the responses that we're going to get back from the Hacker News API, the API that you just saw. So all these API responses are going to be have basically a representation, a Swift representation, and we're going to create that inside a model file. So let's talk about the structure. So we get all the responses in the form of a result, so some sort of result that is getting returned. So we're going to call it results. Now inside this we have a key called hits. So we're gonna basically create a property for that for this hits inside our results struct, or results struct, which is basically the representation for the entire response. Okay, now this hits is gonna have a few properties. For example, it's gonna have an object ID, so we can individually recognize which object or which story we are talking about. It's gonna have points, the number of points that user has given, how popular the story is, right? Title for the story, and the URL. URL is basically going to be used so we can launch our web view using this URL endpoint. Okay, so these are going to be the properties that we're going to be using inside our model. Okay, now with that, we have reached the end of this video, so let's go ahead and hop on to the next video where we're going to start creating our model. Okay, so I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you. Hello and welcome back, and in this video we are going to be working on our model. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're gonna create a new folder here. So let's add a new folder, and we're gonna call this folder model. Okay, now inside the model we're gonna create a new file. Let's create a new empty file, and we're gonna call this post. Okay, and we will create our model here. So there are going to be two models that we're going to be creating, but let's go ahead and start with a foundation import, and then we're going to create our struct. First one is basically representing all the results that have been that basically will be received, and then we're going to have a hit. So if you recall, we had this array of results. Okay, and this array of results essentially gave us, let me make sure I minimize this. Okay, so we had we had a bunch of results, and inside the results we had a key called hits. Okay, so we are going to be basically using that hits key, and we will not call this class as hit, but we'll call it as post. So we're gonna, under the result, we're gonna get array of posts, which is like defined under the key hits, and then we're gonna create another struct which is gonna represent our individual post. Okay, so this is gonna be decodable and identifiable. Now, in order to satisfy identifiable protocol requirement, we would first have to make sure that there is an ID available. Now, when we are creating an ID, it would be something like a UUID or something like that, but we're going to create a string type here, and what we're going to do is we're going to come back and return this return ID as the object ID. So object ID is present inside our response, so we're going to take the object ID, which is going to be a string, and this becomes, the object ID becomes the ID for our post. Okay, so that's what we're going to use as the ID. Now, other properties that we are interested in are title, points, which is an integer, and URL, which is a string. Okay, so these are all the properties that we are interested in. Now, if I bring back the JSON response, this corresponds to all these properties. So you have your object ID here. Okay, that's object ID. You have title here, which is the title for the post. And then you have points represented by points, and the URL, which is basically the URL endpoint. Okay, so now we have our model basically ready to go, and this model is what we're going to use to parse all of our responses that we're going to receive from the API call. Now, this decodable protocol here is going to help us decode that JSON into something that we can basically read or represent as a Swift type. Okay, so next up, what we're going to do is we're going to create our network manager, which is going to help us fetch the data and post the responses, basically whatever it has received from that fetch operation. Okay, so let's hop on to the next video where we're going to create our network manager. I'll see you guys there. Thank you. Hello and welcome back. And in this video, we're going to be creating our network manager. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to create a new folder, and we're just going to name this as services. And in here, we're going to create an empty file. Okay, this empty file is going to be called network manager. All right, and we'll start with the import of foundation. First thing we're going to do is we're going to create a final class called network manager. And we can actually make this conform to observable. Actually, let's make it observation. So import observation framework, and then mark this as at observable. Okay, now this way any property that we are creating is going to be automatically published. Okay, so we're going to create posts, and this is going to be an array of posts, and this is essentially what is going to be populated with the returned results. Okay, so we're going to create a function here. This function is going to be called fetch posts, as the name has suggested here, and we're going to take the suggestion for the URL, but I'm going to remove all these. Okay, so let's first fix the URL. So URL that we want is not this Firebase IO, but the one that we actually discussed, hn.algolia.com. Okay, so I'm going to copy this and paste it right here. Okay, so this becomes our URL. Okay, let's go ahead and make sure that it is properly formatted. Perfect. Okay, so next thing what we need to do is this is, as you can see, this is force unwrapped. So let's go ahead and put guard let and put an else statement to return from here. Okay, so if the URL cannot be extracted from this URL string, then URL is going to be nil, and our program will, or our function will return from here. Okay, so post is still going to be empty. All right, so this is the safest way to unwrap your optional variables. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to create a session. Okay, and this session is going to be the URL session. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a URL session which we're going to use to fetch the data. Okay, so we're going to be using async and await to fetch the data that we're going to receive from this URL. Okay, so we're going to leverage the URL sessions async await function. For that, we need to make sure that this function under which the async function is called, another async function is called, is also asynchronous in nature. Okay, so now with that change, let's go ahead and create a do try catch block. So we're gonna create a do catch block, and anything, any error that we get, we're gonna print that out in our console so we can see what's going on there. Okay, now the URL session fetch is rather easy, and I'll take Xcode's suggestion in this case. And here you can see that we are simply trying and awaiting on URL session.shared.data from URL. Okay, now what this returns is basically a tuple, and the tuple has data and the raw response. So we're gonna cast the data inside the data variable, and we're gonna just ignore the response because we don't need that. If in case you need it, just put it against a variable like response, and you should be able to access all the response related properties. Okay, so once we have fetched our data, then we need to decode it, and this is when we're going to use the JSON decoder to decode. And since our model, which is basically the results model and the post model, they both conform to decodable protocol, we can simply pass this class into our decoder and it'll be decoded and basically converted into Swift representation. Okay, so Swift object will be created out of that JSON because we are conforming to all the right protocols. Okay, so let's create a decoder. This is going to be a JSON decoder, and we are going to get the results. Okay, the results are basically going to be fetched from decoder.decode results.self from data. So we are passing the data that we have received into decoder.decode function, and we are passing the type that we want it to convert to. Okay, so we get the results passed here. Now our results contain the post, okay, in the form of a variable called hit. Okay, so let's go ahead and populate our posts, this guy right here, posts, with the result.post. Now all this operation, like this operation specifically, sorry, it's hits, there we go. This operation specifically is updating the UI because we're going to be using this guy in the UI. So for that reason, we should move ourselves into the main thread, onto the main thread before updating the UI, because all these operations that are happening at this point, they are happening on a background thread. Okay, so we're gonna take these two lines and let's go ahead and wrap it inside a task block, and we're gonna decorate this with @main_actor_in, and this is gonna help us basically move our task, basically move our operation onto the main thread. Now previous, or like, you know, before main actor was introduced, we would always use dispatch queue dot main.async, which you can use again here as well, but main actor is the newer approach. Okay, so we're gonna use basically task block to extract out all the data, all the response, the JSON response, converted into Swift representation, a Swift object, and put it out here. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna print the post. So print posts, so we can see, like, you know, that our fetch operation is working correctly. Okay, now believe it or not, this is all the things that we need to do. This is everything that we need to do basically to fetch these posts from Hacker News API. Okay, let's go ahead and test it out. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave all the code as is, and we're going to add a task modifier. Task modifier helps us execute the async operations onto, like, you know, within SwiftUI space or SwiftUI view. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to first create a state object. So state var network manager, and we're going to initialize our network manager here, and we are simply going to call the network manager dot fetch post, and let's await on this. Okay, so await basically helps us wait for the response, and as soon as we receive the response, then we can proceed. In this case, we are simply going to print out all the responses that we have received. So let's go ahead and build and run. And this is the first time we are running, so it's gonna take a bit to launch the app. Okay, so let me pause the video and I'll resume once it's ready to go. Okay, so our app is launched, and we should be so it's still being launched. So like I said, this is the first time. So first time because we are attaching debugger, and there are some other background operations that Xcode is doing to attach debugger to the app. It's gonna take a bit, but we should be able to see our response in the console. So as you can see, we are getting response, and these are like, some of the latest posts or front page posts that we are seeing on Hacker News. Okay, so let's go ahead and verify that we are getting what we need by looking at the response that we were seeing earlier. Okay, so I have the front page refreshed now, and as you can see, what is the origin of lake tank image? What is the origin of lake tank image? So we are getting the right response from our API, and now our network manager is ready to go. Basically, we've done everything that we need to do to fetch all the news articles from the Hacker News API onto our app. So next steps are easy. We're gonna simply update our content view, and we're gonna list out all the articles that we are reading and print them on this page. And then in subsequent videos, we will actually create our detail view and our web view to complete the app. Okay, so I will see you guys in the next video where we're gonna start writing the content view. Thank you. Hello and welcome back, and in this video we're going to be starting to work on our content view. So some of the work we've already done, so let's go ahead and clean up a bit. So I'm going to clean up just this part, and we're going to create a navigation stack first. Okay, this navigation stack is going to host a list view, and this list view is where we want to attach our task to. Okay, along with the task, we are also going to add a navigation title, and we're going to say this is Hacker News. Okay, and I'll suffix it with DT. Okay, now what we're going to do is whatever we are receiving as a response from the network manager's fetch API fetch post call, we want to actually list those articles out here. Okay, so for that, what we will do is we will simply call network manager, okay, dot posts. So all the posts that we have received, we are going to get them, and we don't have to specify any ID in this case here to identify each post, because post model itself conforms to identifiable protocol. So it is already identifying itself using the object ID that we are receiving from the post call. So for that reason, we don't have to specify any specific ID to identify each of the record. Okay, now next thing what we need to do, or what we want to do, is we want to create a navigation link. And navigation link takes several overloads. We're going to use the one that takes destination and label. So destination is going to be, right now, let's put a text here, and we're going to just say destination view like that. And the label is where we're going to create what we want to show on the UI. So we're going to create an H stack, and inside this H stack, we're going to create a text view with post dot title. Okay, and then we're gonna let's set the font here, and we're gonna set the font as headline. Okay, and let's go ahead and put a spacer in between and create another text which is going to show post dot points. Okay, and we are going to set this as not the title, maybe caption. Okay, and or subheadline. There we go. Okay, now post dot points is an integer, so we want to convert this into a string. There are two ways to do it. I'll adopt the easier way by wrapping this inside a string interpolation, and just putting it as quote backslash post dot points and quotes closed. Okay, you can another way to use or do this is by creating a string object and passing your integer into that, and this actually casts your integer into a string and basically creates the text string representation of the points. Okay, so either way is fine. Let's leave it this way. Okay, so let's go ahead and build and run, and what we should now see is our app listing out all the posts that it has received with their title and the points. Okay, so that's what we should be seeing in a minute. There we go. All right, so as you can see, we have all of our posts showing up now, and since we are still printing our posts, they're also showing up inside the console. So if you want, you can just comment that. Okay, all right, so as you can see right now, when we tap on one of these, it's just going to take you to that destination view, which we have created as the text view. Okay, so let's go ahead and hop on to the next video where we are going to basically write our destination view, okay, or the detail view. Okay, so I'll see you guys there. Thank you. Hello and welcome back, and in this video we are going to be creating our detail view or destination view. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to create a new folder first, and we're going to name this views. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to move our content view inside the views folder, and let's create a new file from template. Okay, and this time around we're going to select SwiftUI view as the template, and we're going to name this as detail view. Okay, so once we have our detail view created, we're going to expect our caller to pass in a post variable. Okay, so let's create a post which is going to be of type post, and now we are getting a post. Now we will actually see this error in the preview, so let's go ahead and create a sample post, and we're just going to leave everything empty in this case. Okay, and that will satisfy the preview provider's requirement, and we can proceed. Now what we want to do here eventually is we want to call our web view and essentially launch the web view to display all the content that is, or like, you know, basically the content that is present in the URL. Okay, but we have not created our web view yet, so let's go ahead and just display post title here. Okay, so post dot title. All right, and what we are gonna go back and do in the content view is we will replace this with our detail view, just like that, and we're gonna pass the post that we have received from the list iteration. Okay, inside the list, what we are receiving as a single post item, we're gonna pass that into our detail view. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this, and what we are expecting to see is basically our view, and as soon as you tap on it, you now basically get to see that different selected thread. Okay, that's being, like, you know, presented here. Okay, so I see a UI issue here. So if you notice, there is this kind of like a container around this, and reason for this is because we forgot to remove this padding from here. So let's go ahead and remove that, and let's go ahead and run this app again, and we should actually see our navigation stack in full glory, and we can actually just use it just like any other app. So now you can see, you can read it a little bit better. Okay, now this also works in the dark mode because we've done everything that we need to do to adopt the dark mode. So I just pressed Command Shift A to change from the light mode to dark mode, and as you can see, our UI easily adopts to the dark mode for this case. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to end this video here, and in the next video we will be creating our web view, and that web view is going to help us launch the post that has been selected by the user, and we can extract the URL and open a Safari in view Safari inside our app and display the content of the URL. Okay, so I'll see you guys there. Well, we're gonna create our web view. Thank you. Hello and welcome back, and in this video we're going to be creating our web view. So let's go ahead and create an empty file this time. Okay, and we will name this web view .swift. Okay, and let's go ahead and start with import. So we're going to import foundation, import WebKit. We're going to need access to WebKit, and also let's import SwiftUI. Okay, so next thing what we want to do is we want to create a struct which is going to be conforming to UI view representable protocol, and this protocol is used when we want to bring UIKit component into the SwiftUI world. Okay, so that is what the UI view representable and UI view controller representable is used for. So when you're using UI view controller representable, it has, like, a couple of related functions, but in this case, because what we are bringing in is a web view, we're going to use a simple UI view representable. Okay, so we're going to create our struct here called web view. This is going to conform to UI view representable protocol. Now, UI view representable protocol wants us to conform to two of the required functions, and these two required functions actually help build whatever we are trying to, display on the UI. So first one is make UI view. Make UI view is used when we want to initialize the view and return that view type to be used within the SwiftUI's lifecycle. Update UI view is used when we have an update and we want to reflect that update, pass that information to the UIKit view so it can update itself, and that update can be reflected back into the SwiftUI version of or SwiftUI representation of the view. Okay, so that's what these two are mainly the required ones, and then we're gonna actually first go ahead and create the first one, which is make UI view. And make UI view gives us access to the context, and it returns some UI view. Okay, now we can change this and we can say we want to return WK web view. Okay, and this will help basically with our other function, which is update. And as you can see, update UI view has automatically resolved to itself to the type of WK web view. If we did not do that, then we're gonna see some UI view here. Okay, so what we're gonna do here is we're gonna simply initialize WK web view and return that. Okay, now once we return this, we are gonna get an update, and whenever our web view is ready to load a URL, we actually will update our UI with that loaded URL. Now for the URL, we're gonna have to have the access to the URL string itself, so we're gonna expect that to be passed in when this particular view is initialized. Okay, so we're gonna expect that to be passed in as let URL string, string optional, and then we're gonna first extract the string. So we're gonna put a guard statement here, guard let URL string else return. Okay, now once we have extracted the URL, we also want to make sure that we can actually construct a URL out of the string. So let's create a URL here, and passing the string URL string. Okay, if any of these operations fail, then we will simply return showing an empty UI view screen. Okay, so this is URL. There we go. String. Perfect. Okay, so now we have our URL ready, so we'll actually create a request. So let request URL request, passing in the URL that we have extracted out, and then we want to load that request using UI view, which is wk web view dot load function. Load function takes a request, a URL request, and it actually takes the responsibility to load that URL by creating this URL string, okay, or URL request. Now this web view is ready, so we're going to go back into our detail view. And remember, last time when we actually worked on this, we created text post dot title. So instead of calling the title or displaying the title, what we want to do is we want to simply pass a web or call our web view, and notice this web view takes URL string. So we're gonna pass our post.url into this. Okay, and with that, this is basically literally everything that we need in order to create our web view and display that particular URL content into the web view using this web view that we have created here. Okay, so let's launch, build and run, and launch the app onto the simulator. And this time around, when we have all of our posts loaded, we're gonna click on one of these, and let's go ahead and wait for URL to load. And as you can see, our URL is loading, and we are seeing a complete web browser with, like, you know, all the JavaScript and everything running just fine. Okay, so you can see, like, you know, there are like a bunch of other articles, and you can just keep on clicking and browsing all the articles. All right, with that, we have reached the end of this video and this video course, where you learned how you can create a Hacker News client using URL session and SwiftUI. And we also used observation framework, async await, and while creating this this app. So once again, great job, and thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys in another video. Thank you.